All right, let's get started. So I just want to say thank you for, firstly, thank you for buying my book, You've Got This. Who could have possibly imagined that when I chose these dates to do these webinars this week, that the world would be in the state that it is. It is almost incomprehensible. In fact, I was just saying to my support crew, Sophie and Angela, that I almost just can't believe it. It all feels very surreal. And I'm not sure how many of you follow me on social media channels, but on Friday, my husband went to the hospital here in Singapore, running a fever, had a cough, and was diagnosed with coronavirus. So he has been in an isolation ward in hospital since Friday. And I was immediately put under a very, very strict stay-at-home quarantine along with my son. And so, yeah, what a time. And so when it comes to obviously the topic of my book, trusting in ourselves more deeply, doubting ourselves less, I had originally, when I had first envisioned these workshops, had originally been thinking that they would be really about helping you conquer the doubts that keep you from going out after the things you want to pursue in your life, from pursuing the highest and boldest vision for your life. And I'm certainly hoping that once we move through this storm, I'm just calling it that, the massive storm that we're in, that You've Got This will actually really embolden you to do just that. But right now, very few people that I know, no one that I know is actually focused on how they can go out and build a big business or start the new career or make some big change. They're more just dealing with what is immediately in front of them. And that's why I decided about a week or two ago to change the focus of this webinar from conquering self-doubt to just dealing with fear and finding our courage in this moment when the whole world is very much gripped by fear and the impact of this extremely infectious virus is taking its toll. But the impact of fear on all of our lives is taking, I think, an even bigger toll. And so I'm hoping that when I go through with you, I've got 5 steps that I'm going to be taking you through over the next, 30 or 40 minutes, but that's going to help you as you deal with what's in front of you right now. So just firstly, a little word about fear. Fear often gets a bad rap. We talk about, banish fear, conquer fear, get rid of fear. I just need to say up front, fear is not a bad thing. Fear is actually a very natural emotion. It's sometimes called nature's protector. It's wired into us to keep us safe and protect us from harm and to have us avoid situations where we can put our well-being at risk. And you might even say that when it comes to coronavirus, some people needed to be more scared. And maybe they would have taken more action, more decisive action earlier and invested in that and made the sacrifices and the trade-offs earlier. But so fear in itself isn't a bad thing. It is wired into us to protect us. The challenge we face is discerning between the legitimate fears that we have to protect ourselves, to avoid risks that are foolish risks that could put our well-being at risk. And then also those fears that actually keep us from taking the very actions that we need to take throughout our lives. And, so often fear sits in that driver's seat and it fuels our doubts, that sense of who are you to do that? You don't have what it takes. You're not going to cope. What will people say? You'll fail. You'll be rejected. And it keeps us from taking the very actions that we could take that would help us to live bigger and more rewarding lives, that would help us to discover how little reason we ever actually had to doubt ourselves to begin with. And so fear isn't all bad, but right now fear, if we're letting it, a lot of people, fear is running really rampant. And left unchecked, fear can really blinker our thinking. So fear actually, we even know, the studies show that when people are really afraid, their actual vision shrinks. So our peripheral vision, when we're really afraid, we're focused on what's right in front of us. We can't even see what's to the sides. And so that's really relevant for us right now, because when all we do is just focused on the immediate threat, actually it stops us from looking around and going, what are the other options for me here? And if you just heard that, that is thunder in the background. There's a big storm going outside where I am right now in Singapore. So fear can be massively constrictive of us. It can keep us from seeing other options. And so that's what I want to help you with over the course of this webinar, because there's opportunities for all of us in periods of adversity. In fact, if you think, it's when the storms blow that oaks put down deeper roots. And right now, collectively, as the storm blows around the world, we are really challenged and invited to put down deeper roots, to become more grounded in who we are as human beings. And when life's easy and everything's going fine, it's easy to kind of cruise by at a superficial level, to just stick with what's comfortable, to just stick with what's easy. But it's when shit happens, as is happening right now, that our old ways of thinking, our paradigms for getting by in the world, get really confronted. Albert Einstein once said that our problems cannot be solved at the same level of thinking at which they were created. And so right now we have to look at life differently. And if we don't look at life differently, if we're looking at life through the same lens, we're going to suffer. You're going to suffer. And it's actually going to keep you living in fear and not taking the very actions that would allow you to put yourself to weather this storm better and emerge from it better off. So as you know, my life's work is really around empowering people to be braver, to live and lead with greater courage. And one thing we know, the good thing, that as you get older, some things go downhill, but actually our ability to, our emotional intelligence, resilience, our ability to weather the storms actually goes up. We gain wisdom, we gain insight, we gain perspective. And so right now we need to be stepping up. When fear runs high, the need for courage runs higher, and we need to be stepping up in how we're showing up for life right now. And if we don't, fear is going to just constrict us, can strangle us. In fact, the derivative of the word worry comes from to strangle. And if you're living in worry right now, just focused on everything that could go wrong, focusing on all the potential worst case outcomes, it actually can just strangle you, can leave you feeling like, I can't even breathe. So we're going to start with some breathing, and is just the first key thing I want you to do, and that is just to ground yourself in your breath. So right now, if you're sitting down, I'm guessing you're sitting down somewhere, I just invite you to close your eyes for a moment and take a breath. And I want you just to notice your feet on the floor, your bottom on the seat, or wherever you are. I want you just to feel with your senses where you are right now physically. Ground yourself into the earth beneath you. And as you do, I want you just to notice your breath. Just notice your breathing. Notice your breathing in and out. And I want you just to identify where in your body you're holding on to fear right now. Because fear lives in our bodies. It's why 2 days ago, after finding out that Andrew had coronavirus, I woke up in the morning, my whole back was just so tight because I was holding on to anxiety. I think maybe as this burden, my shoulders felt tight. I just felt this carrying a heavy burden. And I was like, that's where it's gone. It's this fear response, the stress response is in my shoulders. And so I'm not allowed to go out for a massage. No one's allowed to come into my apartment. So I got on a rolling pin and I was rolling out the muscles. But often our fear, and for me in recent days, it's in my stomach. So if you find out where the fear is sitting on you, maybe it's on your chest right now, maybe it's your stomach, maybe it's your throat. I just want you to put your hand wherever the fear is sitting. And I invite you just to breathe in. And as you breathe in, notice the breath going in. If it's your stomach, notice your stomach going in and out. Do that really deep diaphragmatic breathing. And breathe in faith and breathe out fear. And just as you release your breath, just literally breathe out your fear and breathe out your anxiety. So let's just do that for just a few. Breathe in faith. Breathe out fear. Breathe in self-trust. Breathe out self-doubt. Breathe in courage. And breathe out anxiety. You know, even just that simple act of breathing, even just taking a minute to do a few breaths, can actually help to short circuit our fear response. So that our monkey mind jumps in. You know, when we're feeling under threat, that amygdala, that part of us, that primitive part of us just kicks in and we go into this fight, flight or freeze. Fight, flight or freeze. And actually just even a simple conscious meditative breathing exercise can just help to calm us down, calm down our central nervous system. And so right now, as you're going through what you're dealing with, and I know we're all dealing with different things, we all have different fears coming up, rising up, and they rise up a lot right now. I know they're rising up a lot for me. We have to stop more often. But the beautiful thing is that our brains, you've heard of neuroplasticity, the more often we notice our fear and then we breathe into it where it is in the body, it loosens its grip and it strengthens the neural pathways in our brain. So I feel fear just like you. I feel anxiety just like you. But what I've been really practicing in recent days, and I try and practice all the time, is just being really grounded. It's getting grounded in myself, and we're going to move through that in the next bit of time. So just breathing right now. If there's ever a time for you to stop and breathe more often, it's right now. And so I encourage you just to have these micro practices through your day. So by breathing, we really connect to the present moment, because fear, of course, is what we're projecting into the future. And our brains are twice as sensitive to what could go wrong than to what might go right. So when we perceive a threat, and right now we're perceiving a threat to our livelihoods, to our well-being, to our parents, to our businesses, to our careers, also to our financial status. We're on hyper alert to what we could lose. So when we're in that state, we have to be so much more careful to stop and come back. And just connecting to the breath is just a great way to calm down. But then key thing, and I wrote about this obviously in the chapter 2 of my book, which is on Doubt Your Doubts. I wrote about the importance of stopping and just noticing what you're telling yourself. So in recent days, as my fear has crept up, every now and again I've gone to worst case scenarios. And worst case scenario is pretty awful, as my husband has had a really high temperature, and we know this is a really bad virus, and he's a fit guy, but this is a really bad virus, and it's a pretty awful thought. And so, but then I have to come back and go, Margie, he's going to be okay. He's a fit, healthy guy. What thought do I want to feed right now? But just noticing the thought. And the same, whether it's self-doubt, whether I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not attractive enough, I don't know how to launch this, do this. I mean, this is when it comes to our goals. But right now it's like, what will happen if I don't have this money? What will happen if I lose this? What will happen? Our brains often go to these what if, and we dial up our anxiety. So stop right now, and I just want you to pay attention to the thoughts you've been dwelling in recent days. And a lot of people right now are spending a lot of time focusing on everything bad. And as you know, what we focus on expands, and our energy goes where our attention goes. And so if we're focusing on everything that is scaring us, it just fuels more of the anxiety. Whereas if we focus on what's the good that I can do right now in this moment? What's the good that I can make from this time? I wrote an article, I shared it on social media about, let us not squander the hour of our pain. We're all in pain right now. But there are opportunities in our pain. And there are opportunities for us to go deeper with ourselves, to connect more deeply with other people, to use our time in fruitful ways. My son Ben is locked up here with me for 2 weeks. It's supposed to be his spring break holiday. And, the first day he got out the guitar and he's like, I'm going to try and learn it. Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. And yesterday he baked a banana cake, which is kind of cool for him because he never bakes any cake. And he's been doing all this artwork and I'm so proud of him, just like, what can I do with this time? But notice yourself. What are the negative noises in your head? What are the repeated thought patterns that you keep having? And investigate them and challenge them. And, in that chapter on Doubt Your Doubts, ask yourself, how is this thought serving me? And if it's serving you, it's going to make you feel more positive or more purposeful or more powerful in who you are. But if it's leaving you feeling more anxious, more negative, more disconnected from other people, if it's not expanding your avenues for action, it's not serving you. Now, that doesn't mean we deny realities. Hard realities are hard realities. I've just lost 6 months income stream, for instance, and I'm like, I spent my first day or two going, this isn't fair. I'm supposed to be doing a book launch. I'm supposed to be traveling around the US next month and, blah, 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 blah. All I did was focus on the loss for the first day or two, which left me feeling sad for myself and fueled anxiety financially. And then I stopped and I got my journal out and I thought, okay, what's another way of looking at this right now? What's something else I could tell myself right now in this moment? And, if I was really living my purpose right now, what would I be doing in the midst of this? And it's not to deny that I'm like, why don't I put together a brochure for running online programs with organizations? And by stepping back from focusing on all the negative, it allowed me to go, where is there opportunity? But for you, with whatever's going on right now in your head, I just encourage you to stop and step back and challenge it and say, where am I just stressing myself out? If all you're doing is focusing on all of the potential threats, all of the potential losses, that's not going to serve you. What is there? Where is there an opportunity for you right now? Where is there things for you? What is it that you can do right now that will set you up to come out the other side of this better? Where is there opportunities for you to grow right now, to learn something right now? And actually look outside yourself and take it off you. Who are people around you right now that you are uniquely positioned to help, to serve in some way, to be of value to? And if you've got your own business, it's like, this is a time we have to be innovative and we have to pivot and we have to. So looking at, what is it that what's the benefit for me in the midst of this? And so often you've heard the saying, we spend so much time focused on the doors that have closed, we can't even see the ones that are open or that we could open. So I encourage you to just challenge. What is it that I'm believing right now? What is it I'm telling myself right now? What is it? And then ask yourself, what else could I be saying to myself right now? And what's another belief I could hold right now? And who is it that I need to be right now in the midst of this, that actually that belief is keeping me from being that? So just be willing to just step back and challenge what you're telling yourself. Challenge those negative noises in your head. Those negative noises in our head, they're not who we are. They're often just repeated thought patterns. And the fact is that the more we have something, the more we think something, we look around for evidence to support it. And so stepping back and challenging. And I've done that so many times where, I've thought, who am I to write a book? Who am I to get up on stage? Who am I to do this? Who am I to have a coaching business? Who am I? I'm not this brilliant, or I'm not that. And then it's like, okay, Margie, well, who am I not to? And what is it that actually I might miss out on if I don't do this? And so trusting in ourselves means taking a leap of faith in ourselves. It means daring to defy the doubting voices in our heads. And what I know is that from daring to defy those doubting, fearful voices in our heads puts us on a course to take actions we wouldn't otherwise take, and in those actions actually helps us realize, you know what? The ground didn't open up beneath me. I didn't die. Actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And so often those things we're so afraid of, those worst case scenarios, they don't eventuate. And so we make monsters out of shadows. You know, we come up with all these, oh, this might happen and that might happen. And actually, no, you'll figure it out. And so at the heart of trusting ourselves is really taking a leap of faith in ourselves. And that begins with challenging those beliefs we're telling ourselves that keep us from acting from that place. And so as you think about where you are right now and you ask yourself, if I was going to show up right now in a really brave way, what would I need to believe to do that? I would need to believe I'm going to get through that. I would need to believe that I do have what it takes. I need to believe that, you know, within me is a capacity for whatever comes my way, and I'll deal with it one day at a time. The third strategy for really, I say conquering fear. I don't mean eradicating fear. You don't want to eradicate fear. Then you'll do something really stupid. But I mean taking back the power that fear often unconsciously takes from us. We surrender this power to fear. And when I talk about conquering it, I'm saying I'm taking this back. And another way to do that is to label your emotions. A study by UCLA found that by simply naming the emotions that we're feeling, it actually reduces their potency on us, and it helps disconnect from the limbic system, the part of the brain where it processes emotion, the emotive part, and connects us into activates the prefrontal cortex. So the thinking part of the brain, the strategic, logical, what's the smart way to deal with this right now? And it stops us acting irrationally and being reactive and going, all right. So just naming your emotions. And I encourage you to do that in the days ahead. I was doing that this morning myself. And I was like, I'm feeling anxious. And I was like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And on Friday, I really felt overwhelmed. I was really overwhelmed. And yeah, when my husband messaged me and just said, I've tested positive, this wave of overwhelm came over me. And I cried. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. And saying I'm overwhelmed didn't stop me feeling overwhelmed. But you know what? Just by identifying it as like, yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed. That doesn't mean I'm not going to deal with this. I'm just feeling right now in this moment, I'm feeling overwhelmed. But I know on Saturday, I felt less overwhelmed. And on yesterday, I felt less overwhelmed. And today, I'm actually not feeling too overwhelmed at all. That's not to say that I'm not going to have moments, but just by labeling those emotions. And sometimes it could be, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry and pissed. I'm feeling jealous. Different. We all have all of the emotions, but the more we can name them, the more we can tame them. And it helps us to just by identifying them. When we own the emotions, they don't own us. And so really owning what you're feeling. But when it comes to fear, which is what we're focusing on now, by really owning that fear, by putting your hand on wherever it's sitting in your body, by breathing into it, by noticing, by acknowledging it. And, when we breathe into it, it can really start to loosen its grip. So the fourth thing is, and I wrote about this, I'm not sure, I don't know if all of you have reached this part of the book. And I should have said earlier that if you have any questions, we're going to get to a Q&A part. And so my team are going to share with me the key questions. So feel free in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen to type in any questions you have for me. And we're going to get to that in about 10 or so minutes. And this is around grounding yourself in self-certainty. So Albert Camus wrote, in the midst of winter, I finally learned that within me was an invincible summer. I love that. I found it. That's why it's in the book. All of us have within us a place that is deeper and transcends. It's both deeper and higher than all of the stuff going on around us. that is free from our wounds from the past and our hurts from the past and our insecurities from the past, that's free from our worries and anxieties for the future. And that part within us, I wrote about is, I think our true self, our real essence. And it's where we get our power. It's where we get our strength. It's where we get our resilience. It's where we get our courage. It's what I have lent into and drawn from again and again and again over my life in recent years. It's what I drew on that allowed me to put this book together. And it's what ultimately allowed me to, is allowing me to move through just the storm waves of even recent days. And yeah, I've had moments where I've cried and then I come back to it. It's the light within us. It's the power within us. And I don't know what your spiritual belief system is. And in the chapter on faith over fear, I was very mindful that not everybody subscribes to religion. Not everybody believes in God. But if you have any sort of belief in some sort of karma, the universe, anything like that, then that is about, there's an intelligence that's bigger than ourselves. That who we are, that there is an intelligence that we can connect into that's bigger than ourselves. And that there's a wisdom within us that is bigger than our intellectual logic. And so for me, connecting into that place is a massive source of power. Like, if I know that spirit, the spirit that lives in me, the spirit that I think lives around us, that's a place for us to connect into. It's where right now, our best armor, our best defense against the storms we're in right now is going to be operating and showing up from a place of calm. Yes, things are wild and woolly out there, but how can you show up from a place of calm? How can you show up with a sense of peace, even as everything's going on around you? And that's not just something you do once and go, okay, now I'm good, I'm calm. No, you got to keep coming back to it. I'll get to that in a minute. But so, I think about it, our fears are the waves. They're at the top of the surface and they're blowing big. But actually, the essence of who we are is the still waters that are much deeper. And I think it's so important right now to ground ourselves in that place and to dig deep. That concept of digging deep, if you think about a house that's built on sand, it's fine while there's no wind, and then the wind comes and over it goes. And a lot of us can go through a lot of our lives sort of with pretty shallow roots. If everything generally goes pretty well for you, great. And it's why, sometimes some of the most amazing people I've met are people who've had a really freaking rough time growing up. They haven't been able to live on the surface because their life wasn't easy. They were already being buffeted around from an early age, and they had to go deep in order to be able to weather that and to be able to thrive as adults. And those people go through the world and they're able to deal with a lot of things, and they can see it in a perspective. So right now, all of us are being challenged to go deeper in ourselves because our old ways of getting by aren't going to work right now, or they're going to cause us a lot of suffering and a lot of stress. So when it comes to really connecting, it's connecting in to your true self and putting in check that small self. And I think, there's different ways that we can do that, and grounding ourselves in self-certainty is grounding ourselves in the certainty of who we are, that whatever happens out there, I can handle it and you can handle it. You've got this. I've got this. We've got this. And if you're in any sort of leadership role, and if you're a parent, you're in a leadership role, it's so vital to really keep grounding yourself in that self-certainty. People are looking to you as like an emotional, like a barometer. How am I going to deal with this? And so if you're freaking out and you're anxious and you're stressed, we know emotions are contagious, and fear is the most contagious of all. So it's so important right now to be grounding yourself in what helps you be calm, in what helps you live in alignment with your values. Be kind, be compassionate, be optimistic. Yes, we're in a storm, but we're going to come out the other side of it. And, optimists, people who have faith that even though things are tough, that they'll ultimately come out the other side and good things will be found in it. Optimists weather life storms better. They're going to weather this period better and emerge better off. People who are focused on all the doomsday and the Armageddon and the apocalyptic, and yeah, right now you could say, hey, we're in the middle of it, but are really, really focusing on all of the negative and really cynical and skeptical and pessimistic. Those people are going to they may well get sick. They're going to suffer mentally. They're going to be really struggle. So I just can't emphasize enough right now how important it is to ground yourself in that place of self-certainty, in your ability to rise to the moments. My brother Frank, I wrote about this in my book Brave. So those of you who've got Brave will have read that. But when Frank had his really awful motorbike accident that left him with paraplegia, not that I knew 100% that he had it at the time, but the prognosis was pretty bad, and I was due to fly down to be with Frank in Doha in Qatar. I think I shared this in a recent podcast. And I just remember my coach at the time, Kim George, said to me, I said, I just feel a bit overwhelmed because I have to be so strong for all my family and they're not coping. My mum was not coping. My sister was not coping. My other brother's not coping. No one was coping, and I knew I needed to be strong. And, and she said, it's just stayed with me ever since, is just, Margie, you only need to be strong one moment at a time. And there's such a power that comes from knowing you only have to be strong and brave one moment at a time. And often when we're feeling overwhelmed, we're looking out at like the years ahead of us going, there's all of this life ahead and how will I deal with it? But you don't have to deal with all of it right now. Just you'll deal with what's in front of you right now. And tomorrow you deal with what's in front of you tomorrow, and the next day and the next day and the next day. And that's it. You don't have to have the answers. You don't even need to know what's coming. You just need to know, what are you doing today, and what are the values you're going to show up with today, and who are you going to be today? So some of the techniques that I use for grounding myself in myself, like being really grounded in self-certainty, being grounded in the truth of who I am, the power of who I am. For me, one of my biggest go-to, one of them is my journal. And I shared some of my journal entries with you in the book. But that's a place where I get enormous amount of consolation and reassurance. And for me, I write to God, what do you want me to know? And it's usually something along the lines of, you've got this and you'll figure this out, and you are here for a purpose, and don't doubt it, and show up and live it, and trust yourself, and all of those messages that are the essence of the book that you have. And for you, I encourage you, if you haven't tried journaling, I find it really powerful. Guided meditations, prayer, exercise can just help us work off the stress. Going for a walk in nature, sitting under a tree, playing music, listening to music. I think just things that, when is your spirit? When do you find that peace in yourself? And so right now, I just encourage you to do more of that, and ask yourself, what is the bravest part of you want you to know right now? So right now, I just want you to close your eyes again. Breathe in faith, breathe out fear, and put your hand on your heart. Connect in to that big well of courage within you. Connect with that big inner brave heart that's there, that's always there for you. And I just want you to ask yourself right now, what does the bravest part of me want me to know right now? What does that inner sage want me to know right now? And just see what comes up. Just see if there's a message. And if you did get something just then I just encourage you to write it down now. What was that? And that's an exercise you can do anytime, right? And it helps sometimes if you've done a meditation or you're sitting under a tree. I can't go outside for 2 weeks, so the closest I can get is my balcony, and I'm looking at a jungle. So I sit there, and in the morning, before it gets hot and steamy in Singapore, but in the morning, sit there at 7 o'clock and look out at the jungle, look at the trees, listen to the birds chirping, and write in my journal, because that's my bit of nature. And if I could get out and go for a walk, I would. But just connecting with nature, because I just feel like God lives in nature. I mean, that to me is, if you don't believe in any kind of universal intelligence, just believe in nature. I mean, wow, there's a miracle right there. If that's not a universal intelligence right there, what is? So I just think nature, it's just wonderful to connect, to be in places. Go to the beach if you can, or whatever, wherever you are. I know there's nature there. So grounding yourself in self-certainty, but also not just what does the bravest part of me want me to know right now, but what does it want me to do right now? And who does it want me to be right now? And as my fear rose up in recent days, I just decided when I did this exercise, damn it, I'm going to be even braver. I get sometimes conscious of being seen as too self-promotional on social media. I'm like, oh, that's the Australian thing. Who does she think she is? I mean, is she like, I've got all the negative voices, some of them from my childhood. You're like, oh my God, stop being so in everyone's faces. And I have some people in my family world who sometimes can be a little bit cynical and critical. And I'm like, you know what? Screw them. No, damn it. I'm going to risk being seen as too online right now, because damn it, that's where I need to be. That's where I feel called to be. And if some people don't like it, too bad. And so trusting in myself, no, that's where I'm called to be. And I'm not going to let my fear of what some people might say. And let's face it, some people, or what everybody might say, is usually, the psych we know, is usually 3 to 5 people. So if you ever what will people say? Like, just recognize that's a couple of people. Probably, sometimes it's just a very small handful of people. And we give their opinions the power to stop us showing up in the world and doing what we want to do and speaking our truth and forging our unique path and living life on our terms. So for you right now, like, if you were going to be living your life on your terms and not caring what does everybody else think, what would you be doing right now? And connecting in with that bravest part of you, sometimes, often, the bravest part of us calls us to walk a path that can be a little bit, can put us at risk of criticism or of rejection or of failure. And so I encourage you to do that. And the final key point I want to share is, and I've talked about this a lot, and that is, I shared the quote by Victor Hugo, be a bird perched on a frail branch that she feels bending beneath her. She sings away all the same, knowing she has wings. And when we can trust in our wings, like when we can trust in our capacity to fly, to rise above the challenges that would pull us down, to stay airborne when the branch beneath us cracks or the ground beneath us feels like it's just all totally fallen apart and shaking. When we can trust in our wings, it just alleviates massive anxiety, allows us to still sing, to sing, whatever singing looks like for you, getting on and shining in your light and thriving amid the adversity and uncertainty. And so prioritizing what empowers you right now. For me, usually, it is swimming. I love my morning swim, and I can't do it right now, and that's a bugger. So this morning I literally did some exercise in my room, and I'm doing that instead. It's not quite the same, but journaling. I'm doing more journaling. This morning, actually, I played music on my head and I danced in my lounge room. And I was like, you know what? I've just got to do the things that help me feel strong physically. So I'm still doing some exercise, but physically, make sure you're exercising well and eating well and getting sleep. And you might be not getting as good a sleep. Well, try and fit in a nap. Reading things that uplift you. Yes, stay informed about what's going on, but get off or get away from being sucked into social media, and because otherwise you're going to spend 24 hours a day just looking at, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And you're going to be in a state of constant alarm. Like it's just this urge, you're like, ah. And I know it feels right now like the world's falling apart. I just want you to know it's not. A year from now, the world will still be spinning. Life will be moving forward. So don't be getting immersed in what makes you feel like the world's falling apart. It's not. In fact, there's going to be a lot of good things that come out of this shitstorm that we're in. But connect in with other people. I've said this in recent videos. I know we're calling it social distancing. It should be called physical distancing, because we really need to stay more socially connected than ever before. So spend time with the people you love, but or reach out to them. I mean, have a virtual wine. I'm spending a lot of time having virtual wines right now, but do more of whatever helps strengthen you, body, mind, and spirit. You know, I want to just finish with a little poem by Elizabeth Lesser, who wrote, "This is my prayer to God every day. Remove the veils here, that I may not be intoxicated by my worries and my fears." And it is easy to just find ourselves lost in the fears and the worries. And the truth is that you have within you capacity to do extraordinary things, extraordinary. You also have the capacity to deal with whatever's coming. And when you prioritize those things that empower you, it expands your bandwidth for dealing with those things, for not falling apart and not being a big mess and a big heap. And okay, maybe sometimes you will fall apart and be a big mess, but then being kind to yourself in those moments too, practicing self-compassion, which chapter 4 is obviously all about self-compassion, being kind to yourself. And I've been kind to myself a lot in recent days, and I encourage you to do that too. So we're going to open it up. So thank you. And now we're going to open it up to questions, and I'm going to look at what Ange and I can't see any questions in the chat. So I'm going to head over to okay, I don't see any questions. So I can't see anything. Is there any questions, Sophie and Ange? Otherwise, I will just finish up. So if you have a question, please feel free to join right now. All right. Well, look, I'm going to leave you. Thank you so much. But I will just want to share with you something. Anyone who writes a review online, Angela, my assistant, is going to send out to you a list of where, I don't know where you bought the book, but I'm going to go into the draw for a one-on-one coaching session with me. So I know there's already a draw for anyone who's bought the book. We're going to do a second draw for anyone who does an online review for You've Got This. And the more reviews you do on the more platforms, the more tickets in the hat that you will have, because it's really important for me to get those online reviews. And so thank you so much for listening. I would really appreciate your support as I try and spread the word about my book as I sit here in my house. If this has been a valuable workshop for you, there's one more that we're going to be doing 11 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Australian Eastern Time, and 8 p.m. New York. So please, I would love it if you would just share with people. If you've got value from this, there's some time for others to be part of the next one too. All right, take care. And remember, you've got this. All right, bye-bye.